people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. This Tuesday on DAZN, Caroline Vieier will be taking on former champion Delphine Persoon for what is the newly vacated WBC super featherweight title left behind by former undisputed champion Alicia Baumgartner, who still has the other three. She, like some of the other MVP fighters, decided to drop the green and gold title in protest of the WBC's hardline stance for 3-minute rounds in a women's boxing match. So now, title is up for grabs, and Caroline and Delphine will be fighting for it. Not that far apart in age. Delphine Persoon is 41 years old, to Caroline Vieier, who's 37. Though Delphine Persoon, having been in the paid ranks a lot longer than Caroline, she would have amassed considerably more wear and tear over time than Caroline, who sports a professional record of 10 wins with 1 loss and no draws, no recorded knockouts, having never been knocked out in 11 professional bouts. 11? To Delphine Persoon's 53, Delphine sports a professional record of 50 wins with 3 losses, no draws, 20 knockouts, having been knocked out only once in 53 professional bouts, having debuted as a professional. May of 2009, she's been a professional boxer for roughly 17 years, to Caroline Vieier, who debuted more recently in 2022. That's saying that even though they're not that far off in terms of age, Delphine, having been in the sport longer, she's got a lot more wear and tear. She is the noticeably more war-torn fighter of the two, last in action. In June of last year, opposite the ring, Ana Maria Lozano, who she stopped in the 6th round of a contest scheduled for 8. It was a stay busy fight, the only one that she had the entirety of last year. For that, she had that no contest with Alicia Baumgartner that she was well on her way to losing. She was well on her way to being knocked out, but the contest was halted abruptly due to a clash of heads. I remember afterwards there was talk of a rematch, but that never happened. And so Delphine has fought at least once since then. Caroline Vieier was more proactive in the previous year, having fought 2 times, once in February, then again in July. Currently on a 3-fight winning streak after having suffered her first professional loss in September of 2024 to Joanna Lopez. She rebounded off the loss, and she's won 3 fights since then. Now she's fighting Delphine, and I think she's going to make it 4 on Tuesday. I think she's going to beat Delphine, as stated. They may not be that far apart in terms of age, but they are far apart in terms of wear and tear, experience. And there is such a thing as too much experience. Delphine Persoon has not looked the menacing fighter that she used to in her heyday. These days,
it's a physical style.
Delphine is a pressure fighter through and through, but standing on a bum knee at 41 years old, slower, it's a bit harder to march forward and impose your will. She's a lot more hittable than she used to be, and I think Caroline is gonna box her up, box and punch. Caroline would be the boxer of the two, the more cerebral fighter of the two, with the fresher legs, fresher set of reflexes. This will be going down on the undercard of Pagan versus Jimenez this Tuesday on what is a Dimitri Salita Promotions show via DAZN. I expect Caroline to win a decision in what could be a hard-fought fight. Not saying it's going to be easy, but I imagine Caroline is going to be the one that gets her hand raised. She will become this division's new WBC champion. Men's featherweight news. Reacting to Brandon Figueroa's big win yesterday in Liverpool, His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh took to his social media and said, "A huge congratulations to Brandon Figueroa for showing his character by taking the risk and traveling to the champion's backyard to capture the WBA featherweight title with a dramatic knockout in the final round. We want you to defend your title for the first time on September 12th in Riyadh when we stage Mexico versus the World, featuring the return of Mexican superstar Saul Canelo Alvarez in the main event. The deck was stacked against Brandon. That's why you have to give him credit. Even if you're not a big fan of his boxing, a big believer, he beat the odds because the odds were against him. Being the away fighter, things that were happening behind the scenes.
Out there, the referee did a horrible job. Listen, coming in, we knew they weren't going to do us any favors. Yeah. We knew that. There were the stuff that went on in the locker room prior to the fight, you know, with the whole hand wraps. We show up to the venue, and Nick Ball's got his hands wraps already without our supervision, you know, and that you can't do that. Especially, it's a main event fight, and we talked about this at the fighters meeting. Hey, listen, I want to watch your hand wraps, vice versa. Great. And we show up, hey, he's got his hands wrapped already. What do you mean? And the commission's like, well, there's nothing we can do. And then I called the WBA supervisor. He didn't do anything. They're like, no, we can't do that. What's done is done. No, rules are rules. And so we felt disrespected, obviously. It got fixed. Listen, it's a long story. But anyway, that's the type of stuff we had to deal with. Yesterday at the weigh-ins, he was an hour late to the weigh-in. Nick Ball was an hour late to the weigh-ins. Listen, I love the guy. He's a great guy, great fighter. I respect his team. But what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. And you can't be an hour late to the weigh-ins, man. Yeah. And so we're there waiting for him, and then finally we weighed in, and obviously they both guys made weight, which is great. We want to have a fight. But, I mean, come on, man. Yeah. How are you an hour late? And you don't reprimand the guy or their team, you know what I mean? The rules are rules, and I understand. Listen, this is my first rodeo. So obviously coming into the Lions Den, like I said, being on the B side, I understand these things, and I understand that what we're up against as well.
Manny Robles describing the sights and sounds behind the scenes in Liverpool.
Training Brandon.
In the build-up of the fight, I wasn't aware that Manny Robles had taken on training Brandon Figueroa, so that when I saw him in his corner, I immediately became nervous, having picked Nick Ball to win the fight. Knowing that Manny has been responsible for at least one other big upset in previous years. He was in Andy Ruiz's corner when he upset Anthony Joshua. Seeing him in Brandon's corner, I knew Brandon might upset Nick Ball. He might get him too. Manny, who I've often described as one of the more underrated trainers in the sport today, he trains one of my favorite fighters, Mizuki Hiruta. Now he's also training Brandon on the heels of what is arguably the biggest win of Brandon Figueroa's career, the win over Nick Ball. I think that's a sweeter victory than any victory Brandon has amassed so far, because I reiterate, the deck really was stacked against him, and so the world is his oyster, and a lot of people want a piece of him. Turkey El Sheikh wants to use him on a very big show in September. Newly crowned WBC champion Bruce Carrington would like to fight him.
Be a great fucking fight for that show.
What we're seeing now is an outpouring of interest in Brandon Figueroa, not just unifying titles with Bruce Carrington, but also Mexico's own Rafael Espinoza, the longest reigning champion at this weight, and to many people, myself included, the most dangerous. In an ideal world, you do Brandon Figueroa versus Bruce Carrington, Rafael Espinoza versus Angelo Leo on the undercard of Canelo's big ring return. Those fights would all promise to deliver.
Those are all action guys. Rafael, Brandon, Angelo, Bruce.
Bruce had a big highlight reel knockout of his own in the Carlos Castro fight. Brandon followed that up, knocking out Nick Ball.
Didn't you say you think Nick Ball could get a rematch?
Still might. Turkey El Sheikh has used him on his shows more than once, so maybe he takes this opportunity to stage a rematch between Brandon and Nick. But is Brandon receptive to a rematch with Nick? That's the question. Would he go for that? Does Nick have any leverage at all to get a second fight? Is Turkey at all interested in making a second fight? Questions that need answers. Who else is interested? Shushu Carrington is interested.
Newly crowned WBC champion.
How does a fight between Bruce Carrington and Brandon Figueroa go? Brandon's a lot more experienced than Bruce in the paid ranks. He's been a champion at two weights, been in there with the likes of Stephen Fulton, Luis Nery, Joet Gonzalez, now Nick Ball.
How does a fight between Bruce Carrington and Brandon Figueroa go?
Discrepancy in height between Bruce and Brandon will not be anywhere near as dramatic as it was between Nick and Brandon. Bruce has a little bit more height on him, a little bit more length, enough that it won't be a David and Goliath situation between them. To the eye, Bruce has got a bit more speed and sharpness, very sharp reflexes. I think he would be the faster of the two between him and Brandon. What Brandon has that Bruce doesn't have is more of a work rate. Brandon throws punches in bunches, for better or worse. He is a pressure fighter, and it's pressure and persistence that won him the fight yesterday. With that, win him a fight with Bruce. It's either Bruce is going to box him up,
Or Brandon is gonna mow him down.
Brandon's best bet to win the fight is to make it a fight and not a boxing match like Bruce is going to want to. You know, Bruce is going to move and punch, try to set traps, counter you. Brandon's got to get past all of that and make it a fight. The old saying goes, fight the boxer and box the fighter.
Brandon's gotta make it a fight. Bruce has gotta make it a boxing match.
Because Brandon is noticeably slower than Bruce Carrington. His defense is a lot leakier in spite of being the more experienced, decorated fighter of the two. It's easy to hit Brandon Figueroa. If little old Nick Ball was able to land that many jabs on Brandon as Brandon was coming forward in spite of his size advantage, if Nick can land that much on you, Bruce can land that much on you. And punch for punch, I think Bruce punches harder than Nick Ball. So if he lands that many times on Brandon, Brandon may not take it well.
Brandon's never been knocked out, but then again, neither had Nick Ball before yesterday, so there's a first time for everything.
Good look at Carrington versus Figueroa as a somewhat 50-50 fight. That Bruce is a supremely talented fighter, but a lot less experienced than Brandon Figueroa. And as stated, it's either Bruce boxes him up or Brandon mows him down.
Brandon.
There is also interest in seeing Brandon fight Rafael Espinoza, which I think is less likely to happen because Rafael, like Brandon, has largely benefited from being very big for these divisions, very big for the weight. I don't think Brandon will be as hip to fight him as he might be to fight Bruce or Angelo.
Or Nick Ball again.
Everything that might make Brandon a dangerous fight for somebody at this weight. Rafael benefits from the same thing except he's bigger, and I think he punches harder. Don't get the impression that Brandon Figueroa, on the heels of this big win, will be in any hurry to sign up for a fight like that. Does he take Turkey up on his offer?
He better.
He's not at liberty to run back to PBC Island and hold that belt hostage, defending it against no-hopers and scrubs. The PBC don't have the same resources that they used to. His best bet to parlay that belt into a big payday is to take Turkey up on his offer. Fight in Saudi. Wouldn't be the first PBC fighter to box on one of Turkey El Al Sheikh's shows. Carlos Adames did. Rayo Valenzuela, Isaac Cruz, Rolly Romero, they did. Brandon can.
Brandon.
I think he's got to do it. The field of options for a featherweight, even a featherweight champion to make money, is still quite narrow. At market value, those same fights don't pay out as much, but if Turkey's willing to pay for them, that changes everything.
He deserves all the credit, no? Even if my body don't feel like I really want, but I did well. No, you need to take the losses and learn from that and keep going. I have cramps in my legs, so doesn't respond the way I really want. But, you know, it is what it is. We learn from that and we move forward. I know what mistakes I made in the fight and in the camp too.
Was there any part of you that got upset when he announced his retirement and you said, oh, I gave you the opportunity, now you're not going to give me the opportunity back?
Yeah, of course. I always give all his credit, no? But we need to run it back. That's why my tough. When after the fight, I say we need to run it back this fight because I don't feel the way I really want. I need to make this fight happen again, and it's gonna be different. I think for him to deserve all the credit, he need to give me the rematch, obviously. But I will. He decide to retire, and the rematch will be perfect for boxing. No, but it is what it is.
Responding to retirement claims, Terrence said, if I were to come back, who would I fight? I have nobody to fight and nothing to accomplish. That would mean that I'm just coming back for the sport and money. I never fought for money. I fought for legacy.
The money came with it.
Canelo Alvarez would like for Terrence to give him the opportunity that he gave Terrence, but I, as a consumer, a boxing fan, have no desire to see a second fight between them, the same way I didn't want to see a second fight between Canelo and Dimitri. It was a decisive loss. Not every fight deserves a rematch. If it's close enough and tight enough, I understand, but for me, that fight wasn't close. Terrence won that running away, figuratively speaking.
Not actually running.
I mean, I didn't have any trouble scoring that fight. It wasn't a hard fight to score because it was a decisive win. So the idea of a second fight, because Canelo's body was not responding the way that he needed it to.
It's not a strong enough argument. I'm just being honest. I completely understand Terence Crawford walking away from the sport when he did because he's not a young guy. He's in his late 30s. He's a few years older than Canelo.
He is.
There's a rare opportunity to walk out on top. With his record, his O, and his legacy intact, I actually wanted Terence to retire off of that win. As far as Canelo, I understand his desire to do a second fight. I get it.
But I'm not pressed to see one. I have no desire to see a rematch. That's just me. Maybe you guys feel different. Canelo, to me, is still good enough to beat other fighters, young ones, that are in the division right now. If it's Canelo versus Resendiz for the WBA, or Canelo versus Shiraz for the WBO, I think Canelo wins those
I
fights.
think he beats those guys.
And those are credible opponents. They're still credible for anybody else. So that if Canelo fights them, they're credible for him. I think he's still got it. Some of you out there aren't going to like the sound of this, but if Canelo Alvarez gets an alphabet title in the super middleweight division and becomes a champion again, he's back on the Ring IQ pound for pound list. That would prove that even if he's not number one, he's still got it, and he's still one of the best fighters in the sport. He would have to have been in it this long and been a champion that many times at that many weights. If Canelo wins in September and becomes a champion in doing so,
He's back in the top 5.
now as far as Terence, it reminds me of that old Frank Sinatra song.
I did it my way.
Terence did it his, much to the chagrin of his critics who would love to see him falter, would love to see him fall. One of the earmarks of Terence Crawford's career is he did things his way, and in the end, it all worked out. It dawned on me the other day, given Floyd Mayweather's legal troubles, Mayweather, who was reported to have made far more money in his career than Terence made in his, in the end, Terence will have pocketed more of his own money than Floyd did his, even though Floyd generated more. I remember the usual suspects used to call him top-ranked Toby,
Those fucking idiots.
because he wasn't one of Al Heyman's stooges, one of his acolytes. Come to find out, he was right not to do so, right not to go over there, because all the guys who went over there got fucking robbed, Floyd Mayweather included. But remember that they used to castigate him for doing things his own way and not kissing the rings, not bowing down to boxing's would-be fairy godmother, fairy godfather.
Crawford's got street smarts. What did I say in my previous video? Floyd Mayweather, for as talented as he was little more than just an athlete. Not a street person with any street savvy, whereas Terence
Terence didn't buy into Al Heyman's bullshit. The Broadman bullshit.
It's all bullshit.
The us versus them bullshit. Listen, buddy, at this level, the only color that matters is green. I think Terence understands that in a way that perhaps Floyd never did. So Al Heyman was able to get into his head, win him over, and win his trust in the first place, so that all these years later turned out to be a con job, where Terence didn't allow himself to get conned.
Does things his way.
And he's largely benefited from doing things his way, much to the chagrin of his critics and his naysayers who still try to put him down, still try to denigrate him, not caring about what they think and doing things his own way. He's come out on top.
He's come out better than Floyd. I don't see anybody saying it, but I will. He's smarter than Floyd.